Andreas Krieg is a security studies lecturer at King's College London and Gulf analyst, and he's here to help break it down. Andreas, welcome back to MEE Live. Now, along with Pakistan, the Gulf region has been key to the mechanics of this deal. Though they've taken different postures during the conflict, it does appear most have played some role in the deal's formulation. Why are Gulf Arab states appearing overwhelmingly in support of the deal? Is this an expression of support for the US and for Trump?
Absolutely not. I think this is out of pure pragmatism and understanding the sort of complexities of the security environment that they're in. They're in a shared geography with Iran, and that is not going to change. Even a country like the UAE, which is very closely aligned with Israel, understands that there is no escape from this quite superior force to their north in Iran, and also that they understand that there isn't anyone who's going to come and help them. The United States have not they were not a protector of the GCC, and much more have probably put them on the target list of the Iranians. So in the context of all of that, knowing that Trump is also really not a deal maker as he promised to be, they understood that the only way out is pulling together and saying, okay, we need to find a deal to get back to trade and opening up the Strait of Hormuz, which is exactly what the primary objective of all of this is, because otherwise a frozen conflict with the Strait of Hormuz closed is obviously going to be detrimental to their wealth and their prosperity. But obviously, even in that, there are different positions. I think it's quite clear that Qatar has played an immensely powerful role in the background. They've tried to keep it silent. They've tried to stay in the shadows, giving Pakistan the lead. But actually, a lot of the negotiation that's been going on over the last 2 weeks has gone on either through Doha or by Qatari diplomats flying to Islamabad, flying to Tehran in order to broker this MOU.
Qatar certainly seems to have played a really key role mediating, but not just Qatar. Actually, the FT reported a detailed outline of the process. We see Saudi and Emirati leaders collectively calling the US president as he repeatedly wavers over resuming all-out warfare. So as you point out, it is a sort of real coming together. And that wasn't always a given. If we look at the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates, there is certainly today some opposition to the deal, a growing sense that Tehran has gained leverage over the course of this war. And during the war, the UAE not only launched dozens of strikes on the Islamic Republic, but tried to prevent Pakistan from mediating between Tehran and Washington. However, on the other hand, we just heard from my colleague Sean, and it was reported in Reuters as well, that the UAE agreed to pay Iran billions of dollars to stop attacking it. We've seen Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officials invited over by security advisor in the UAE. So the UAE has denied these reports. Nevertheless, they seem to be the talk of the town, to quote my colleague Sean. How do we make sense of this pivot on the part of the UAE?
I think the UAE is probably the most interesting one because they have really shifted on that continuum, which at the beginning of the war, we had Oman on one side, very clear that they played the neutrality card. Diplomacy was the only way forward. At the other end of the spectrum, we had the UAE that at that time was talking about defiance, strength, projecting strength. It was about coercion. It was about deterrence. And now, obviously, they pulled out $3 billion from Pakistan as a punishment for Pakistan taking a more conciliatory approach towards Iran. And now it seems they've come around to actually embrace the MOU and the diplomatic process, supporting the Qatari efforts. What is quite interesting in all of that is that there is tension going on clearly within Abu Dhabi and also between Abu Dhabi and the Northern Emirates over how to deal with Iran. The MBZ, the president's position has been that of defiance, of strength, of deterrence rather than entanglement and engagement. And then you have Tahnoun bin Zayed, who suddenly reappeared on the surface. I mean, he'd been nowhere to be seen for a month, has now come back to kind of lead on that policy issue. And it has been his sort of strategic mindset, this idea of entanglement, engagement, weaponized interdependence through commercial networks, that kind of led the sort of policy in the UAE to say, look, we allow the Iranians, we allow the IRGC to do business in the UAE, and thereby in return, we will not be attacked. That clearly didn't, this kind of equation didn't in the end come to fruition. But nonetheless, there was no alternative. Tahnoun bin Zaid put his foot down and said, look, we cannot win this militarily. Israel is not there to win the war for us because they can't win the war for themselves. The US doesn't want an all-out war. The GCC, the partners around us, don't want a war. So we really have no option but to come to the negotiation table. And it seems that Tahnoun has won this part of the conflict over MBZ's approach, which was far more assertive early on. And again, the idea being that maybe a united GCC position is far better for national interest in the UAE than one where everyone pulls into opposite directions.
For Iran's part, what does Iran need to do to re-earn the trust of its neighbours? You know, we've seen these huge conciliatory strides made, this great cooperation by the GCC in trying to re-establish peace and stability in the region. What about Iran? What does Iran need to do as a show of faith to the Gulf?
The number one sticking point, the one issue that we all need to think about and that the GCC is thinking about is freedom of navigation around the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians have to show not just goodwill, but they have to stick to international law and really show that they will open up the Strait of Hormuz to allow free passage and trade to the GCC from the GCC to then reboost the global economy, but obviously also specifically energy markets. And so it has to be made very clear that there is now a way for shipping companies to go through the strait. I think that's the number one thing. But it's I think, too premature to just think about rebuilding trust. I think whatever trust was there before the war has completely evaporated now on all sides. I would even include Oman in this. The idea that now the GCC will just return to a situation ex ante is just not going to happen. And also Qatar, which had a long-standing relationship with Iran, is now really has to focus on how to manage that relationship. I think the realization, though, is it is one of interconnectivity. It's one of shared geography. But ultimately, the Iranians will have to show that they mean business. And mind you, there's still a lot of voices in Iran who are pushing back against this deal, who are pushing back against the MOU. And those people might still, these hardliners might win over those who were more pragmatic in kind of getting into an MOU. So trust is not there, and it will take years to rebuild, if that.
Andreas, Krieg, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us here.